If it can go wrong, it will go wrong in the Philadelphia 76ers organization. We are just days away from the start of the 2024 season, one of the most highly anticipated seasons in Sixers history, and Paul George has suffered an injury in preseason. Yes, in just his second live game action in a Sixers uniform against the Atlanta Hawks, that Paul George suffered a knee injury that has quite a few fans panicking, myself included here. Now, I will admit that I have settled down a little from the initial injury that has happened, but it is not time to breathe a sigh of relief yet, as we do not have an official diagnosis at the time of recording. I do want to dive into exactly what went down, pull up the video clip of him specifically getting injured, and then break down what we know at this point, as well as how this impacts the entire season as a whole. It is far from ideal for Paul George to be missing any time whatsoever. I've seen the slants of people being, I guess, grateful that this is happening early to get it out of the way, because we know there is an injury history here. But I'm just going to start with pulling up the video here and then break down what we know. So Paul George sliding his feet defensively, and you just never like to see that right there. So I'm going to pull that up again. He's in this defensive stance. He takes a step back, kind of a retreat step, and that back left foot, and then he just pops in a way that you never want to see. So you can see it again here that he is shuffling, and then bang, that left knee is not what you want to see here. Now, to pull up an exact image of what we're talking about here, it is that hyperextension, and that is what he has officially been diagnosed at by the Sixers organization. He was ruled out of last night's game after this situation happened. He was being subbed out at that specific time of the game anyway, so there was a dead ball immediately after that play. It ended up kind of the ball heading down the other end and then hitting a natural stoppage. Paul George checked out, walked a little gingerly, but honestly looking pretty normal to the bench there, but walked right into the locker room. And then it was halftime. It was right before halftime when this initially occurred. The Sixers came out for the second half, and Paul George was not a part of the team here. So all we know from the Sixers side of things is being diagnosed as a hyperextended knee. And while this is a great sign that we don't know anything more than that, that is still not a sign that we are fully in the clear. And to kind of get a little more info on that, shout out to Jeff Stotts. There was a ton of the Twitter doctors chiming in on the situation online last night. And he says, for Paul George, the term hyperextension is more of a descriptor of what happened to the knee than the actual diagnosis. Expect more tests to come. Injuries labeled as, quote, hyperextended knee result in an average time loss of 6.4 days. So that would be by far a best case scenario for me if we're looking at just a couple days here. My honest gut reaction when I did see the clip, and to pull it up one more time here, is I was concerned that this was an ACL injury for Paul George. And specifically, and shout out to my 3 years of physical therapy school that are somehow coming into handy more and more with the Sixers team. But really what happens there, the hyperextension, is when it puts a little just extra pressure on your ligaments. So your knee snaps in a way that is not naturally braced for, and the ligament is at the center of all that it is in the middle of this. That's what kind of takes that and braces for it. In an ideal world, that it can just take that naturally, that it kind of takes that hit and it's able to hang on, and that's what it's built to do. It is the stabilizer of the knee, but there are situations which is a little bit too rapid, and ultimately that's when tears do happen there. It also could be a variety of other things. That is not just an ACL ligament in there. There's plenty of other ligaments, as well as like a popliteal muscle and a couple other things holding things down. The bottom line is there's a lot that can go wrong in a knee. Right now, we don't know if anything truly did with Paul George, and I will put on the table once again that there are just hyperextensions. This could just be a little bit of a bone bruise where he felt the impact of it, but there's no structural damage or things along those lines. I do expect there to be full MRIs and imaging before there's an official diagnosis on that. But for the time being, we don't really know much beyond what has been said. Now, what did ease my mind slightly was Paul George himself. So first, shout out to Gina Menzel of the Philadelphia Inquirer, who really was a star of last night's reporting. Sixers beat reporter of the night, no doubt about it. And she tweeted out, chatted with Paul George in the post-game locker room. He had a sleeve on his knee, but was walking and said he is, quote, not too concerned about the prognosis. We'll get treatment on it tonight and proceed from there. More coming later. And then in her story that she initially dropped today, Gina, she writes, quote, obviously, I'm in a new organization I'm trying to build. We've got so much with growing pains and only so much time to learn and try to figure out with each other. So it stinks. It's unfortunate, but again, I'm not too concerned going forward of what the injury is. It'll just be a little time. And Nick Nurse also spoke pretty highly, or not too concerned in the situation. This coming from Gina as well, and she says, Nick Nurse on the timing of Paul George injury, quote, certainly trying to work him into things, and he wants to work into things too. So this doesn't give him a chance to do that. Hopefully it'll be okay, so he's back with us right away. So overall, kind of the theme of this, which again, it is an ugly looking video here. I don't like the way that he drops to his knees immediately after, but we don't know anything to be panicking just yet. And it is kind of pretty reassuring to me that Paul George specifically, who is a guy who's lived through plenty of knee injuries himself and had plenty of significant injuries, does not seem worried that this is going to be added to the list there. If Paul George is out for a couple days, sign me up. If Paul George is out for a couple weeks, sign me up. If Paul George is even out a month or two, you can sign me up for that. What I don't want this to be is a lost season for Paul George before it only gets started, and that is where my head went when the initial injury happened there. Now, when kind of speaking about the context of this team, I do think we're faced for a brutal reality here. That Paul George, the injury history comes with him. With all those smooth skills, the way he can shoot the ball, the things that I love about Paul George, it comes with the injury concerns as well. That this is a guy who's had some of the more gruesome injuries that we've seen. Let's not forget that leg break that did ultimately occur at the Olympics there. We also remember, a ton of other knee issues. He specifically dealt with a hyperextension before during his time with the Oklahoma City Thunder. That held him out for the final few games of the regular season as well as some playoff time. So it's not a great track record with things. It's not a great sign that it's happening this early. But I do think that the clear picture in mind is forget these deals we're talking about for swinging for another shooter or bringing in a power forward. These Sixers should be investing every possible asset they have into a medical staff for this team, because it's going to take that for Paul George and Joel Embiid to be able to survive the entirety of the season here. I think seeing last night happen, seeing how quickly things can change in the flash of the eye, for starters, is all the more evidence why Joel Embiid should not be playing in preseason. And I know the last video that I just dropped on this channel was speaking about the concept of preserving him for the entire year, the new game plan, the new normal that is in place for Joel Embiid, the regular knee checkouts, the extended time off, not playing back-to-backs. Those are all done for the sake of giving this team a fair chance at the playoffs. I think unfortunately Paul George is going to have to be on some similar sort of track there. That shout out to Tyrese Maxey, because you are going to be the guy that is going to be carrying this team on a night-to-night, because I do think Paul George is going to need a little bit of rest time as well. And to pull up Maxey's stats exactly here, we know what he can do, and I do believe that he's going to take another step forward this year. But ultimately, this was a bit of a reality check that we did see Paul George almost revoked from our Sixers timeline and experience in the season that we had excited for ahead. So for now, I will say let's breathe a little bit of a sign of relief until we know that there is something more to be worried about here. Let's not think that way. So my initial meltdown last night, thinking about that this could be disastrous for this team, I'm not ready to fully reflect and embrace that reality unless it does become true here. But we still got to stay tuned and see what those MRI results. So everybody, let's still send some good vibes to Paul George. I am very excited for what he's going to bring to the Sixers team as long as he is able to remain healthy. So hopefully that is the case for the season here. I think we're going to be in it for the long haul this year with injury updates on a pretty regular basis with both Joel Embiid and Paul George. But these stars can still align and give this team a fair chance at the playoffs. If you give me one healthy playoffs of Joel Embiid, everything else is worth it. All this management, all these other concepts, all this game planning of making sure you're maximizing your opportunity there, it is all worth it if we can just get that. So still a lot of work to do this season. Cannot wait for actual basketball to be played. Let's keep everybody notable out from preseason for the remainder. It's insane that they have like 6 preseason games anyway. That is too many. Let's get to the real thing, and I hope you guys are there for the ride with me. So appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning into this video here. Let me know your thoughts on the comments for Paul George specifically here. Did this kind of change your meter of concern for a season long or 4 years long that this organization is going to spend with Paul George? It is not great to see it in the preseason, but I'm willing to write it off as a bit of a freak accident right here. And once again, let's send some good vibes that there is no serious damage to that knee here. So shout out to you guys once again for tuning in. Make sure you smash that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video, any comments you have below. And I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.